Propaganda, what we have today, is an increasingly sophisticated, full-spectrum assault on the free will and the psychological well-being of all people. We are in a war over consciousness, which necessitates that we pay attention and develop our own personal formulas for navigating the controlled chaos being generated in the public scape. There are some heavy agendas being rolled out, being served up on lies and deceptions, in an effort to make them acceptable to the public over time. For this reason, we examine the nature of propaganda and how psychological manipulation is commonly used to weaponize the third-dimensional narrative, to control the perception of others through deceptive, abusive, and underhanded tactics in order to advance the primary control agenda and the selfish interests of manipulators and sociopaths. To understand the many interconnected motives behind the war over consciousness, the war over free energy, as well as the major conflicts occurring in the factions that are resisting the full disclosure event, we must first recognize the critical importance of the current third-dimensional narrative that enforces false beliefs and perceptions about reality. The false narrative has been staged through intentional psychological warfare methods directed towards humanity, through scientifically engineered propaganda, directed through military-based strategies of technological mind control that produce consensus reality bubbles, used to self-enforce the mass programming. Once we can clearly see the engineering of the false narrative used to manipulate our consent, then we begin to see the larger power structure of control arranging itself into a complex form of obfuscation. This is achieved through the exploitation of what we don't know, because we've been lied to, through compartmentalization and layers of hierarchy. Most organizations reveal themselves to be closely connected to the academia, science, intelligence communities, and the militarization-based industries that directly support the war profiteers and the divide and conquer motivations of the negative alien agenda. To protect and insulate these compartments, they are presented to the public as many different industry storefronts, which are embedded into the inverted system, hidden throughout the controller mechanisms working towards achieving full spectrum dominance. These agendas are hidden in plain sight. Thus, psychological manipulation, propaganda, and burying those that inquire in a maze of bureaucracy and ridicule become necessary for its survival. The spreading of disinformation combined with the overwhelm and wear-down tactics are used to ensure the continued existence of the controller agenda at whatever cost, and generally to keep doling out the massive profits or payoffs that are handed over to a select few. Throughout this discussion, it is important to consider that these are the strategic psychological manipulation methods employed by both human and non-human interests, those that seek to gain advantage over others through exerting dominating control in the physical reality. Those at the top of the power and control game will do anything, say anything, and lie about anything in order to maintain control or advance their position. This is how it is. It is important to know that this is also the predictable profile of satanic forces, an ideology that has infiltrated and infected the corporate workplace, as well as the controller pillars of society. Psychological manipulation. Propaganda is used for the purpose of psychological manipulation to generate mental fabrications and emotional reactions that are intended for seizing control, power, benefits, and advantages at the victim's expense. Propaganda is essentially embedded into many forms of public relations, marketing campaigns, advertisements, and social media that are designed to seduce and persuade people by manipulating their unconscious mind, instinctual desires, and impulses. Currently, the same propaganda tactics have advanced into the digital age, which serves as even more effective medium for mind control tactics by spreading disinformation on a global scale, distracting the masses with a whole new world of digital propaganda utilizing spam bots, algorithms, and artificial intelligence. These can be intended for the weaponization of information that is used more specifically for psychological manipulation and to shape false narratives. People make decisions based on the information they have been given and have available to them in their environment. They may make assumptions or decisions based upon false information, and accumulatively, the consistent exposure to false narratives shapes their personal reality and influences the popular culture. Those that seek to control or enslave others know that shaping narratives becomes absolutely crucial in controlling groups of people in order to socially engineer behaviors and move them in the direction the controller wants them to go. Those that have the most knowledge, intelligence, and conscious awareness of what is really happening in world events will have the most strategic advantage. Those that do not have access to accurate information, who have little awareness of larger events or truthful knowledge about the reality, are instead manipulated and deceived to believe in false impressions and illusions, will be at a greater disadvantage. Knowledge and awareness of the truth is personal power. Luciferians typically know the value and importance of accessing knowledge, and therefore have decided to keep it to themselves, leaving the rest of the population in dark ignorance. Managing intelligence and controlling access to information includes supplying the perceived enemy or opponent with disinformation in order to trick them into making the wrong decisions based upon that disinformation. In the current psychological warfare climate, diminishing easy access to open source knowledge and placing limits on the sharing of information freely within the global community is an important concept to understand when intending to create power imbalances. An adult with an undeveloped and uninformed mental body, coupled with the stunted emotional body of a traumatized child, will be no match for an extremely mentally developed being who knows our thoughts create reality. False narratives create power imbalances. Thus, those that are manipulators of false narratives, providing disinformation, or regularly spinning information towards certain agendas, are also people that fall within the controller archetypes. They can be power-hungry individuals, profit-motivated salespeople, governmental organizations, non-physical entities, or those working in the power elite, heading the multinational web of corporations and their many storefronts interconnected with the controller pillars of society. Controllers use propaganda for the purpose of psychological manipulation to deliberately create imbalances of power in order to exploit their targeted audience and to gain the power needed to get others to enforce their agenda. We are being increasingly exposed to controller archetypes using propaganda messages and images to influence psychological and emotional manipulation tactics that are sourcing from both human and non-human entities with dark agendas. However, all forms of psychological manipulation tactics are aggressively used by the same dark forces using manipulation methods that seek to control others, and that deceptive behavior is the hallmark of imposters. Imposters are people and entities that represent themselves to be something that they are not, using deception and illusions through propaganda messages in order to control perception, so they can gain powerful influence over others to get what they want. As a result of the dominating influence shaped by the negative alien agenda's controller culture, many people are conditioned in society and in the workplace to also advance their own purposes and personal gain at virtually any cost to others. Generally, this comes with a desire to gain feelings of power and control over others, which lends to feeling more superior while raising perceptions of self-esteem. The controller culture rewards people that use propaganda and psychological manipulation to get the advantage over others, which instills extremely negative behaviors as well as a lack of empathy that spills over into their personal life and relationships. This has also been described as the intentional production of workplace psychopaths, with the corporate consumer environment rewarding extremely negative and harmful behavior and noting how that behavior influences popular culture. Propaganda is directly related to classical conditioning mind control tactics that are used to psychologically and emotionally manipulate people in order to exert control over them and generally exploit their vulnerabilities. Propaganda is effectively used in a wide range of mass media, including digital media that conveys messages and images that are designed for mind control and shaping false narratives. Propaganda can be seen in the aggressive marketing promotions inserted with social engineering methods that are designed to influence the masses to further the anti-human agenda. Through the intentional exploitation of the subconscious impulses, Western society's values are being shaped by the predatory consumerism and moral nihilism that is used to promote and spread the death culture worldwide. When we can identify that system of predatorial behavior which breeds the lowest vibrations of satanic forces that increase human misery, we can see it operating everywhere throughout the control structures and consumer systems in the global marketplace. Therefore, it is important to be aware of these manipulation methods and ask ourselves, what we know about propaganda messages. How is propaganda being used? And what can we do to shield ourselves to prevent its destructive effects in our psyche and unconscious impulses? We should be able to better discern the difference between gaining knowledge through being educated and informed in matters versus information that is being intentionally manipulated to influence an audience to spread a specific agenda. By manipulating people's behavior without them even realizing it. Not taking what we've been told at face value by doing our own research and due diligence, combined with critical thinking and common sense, helps us to become more responsible in where we invest our time and energy. The propaganda model. The covert intelligence community, or deep state cabals, have been partnering with news media organizations for decades, and an entire series of books could be written on their intentional use of psychological manipulation for the purpose of social engineering and mass mind control. In order to manipulate the masses, the power elite covert organizations infiltrated mainstream media corporations and set up privately owned think tanks to spread disinformation and produce stories shared on most news channels to gain full control over the media outlets. Much of the disinformation tactics are the byproduct of government intelligence experiments conducted in partnership with academic and scientific institutions worldwide. Recognizing academia as the most fertile soil of assorted human mind control and behavioral experiments, such as MKUltra. In general, when committees or think tanks are being formed by the experts to perform due diligence and research on controversial news topics surfacing in the mainstream, it is highly publicized for the purpose of neutralizing public dissent and to eradicate any further questioning by independent researchers. By appointing a committee of supposed experts handpicked by the intelligence community that have reached inconclusive end results in their exploration of unapproved topics, the psychological manipulation tactic used is that the authority has told us that there is nothing to look at here, folks. It is a method used to shut down discussion and incite silence in the opposition, much like the term conspiracy theorist is used as slander to discredit legitimate questions from being raised by researchers using critical thinking skills. Primarily, this controller strategy was designed to suppress information in order to protect corporate interests and covert agency storefronts, and advance the goals of the controllers and the negative alien agenda for full spectrum dominance. Operation Mockingbird shows the origins of the controllers' mainstream use of propaganda messages through psychological manipulation and disinformation campaigns by supplying false and misleading information to the public, which was given to them by branches of government and by those power elite in high positions of global corporate and financial power. Returning to the past, we must recognize that post-World War II began the aggressive negative alien agenda infiltration into everyday human society. The Black Sun influence exerted into the controller pillars was an alien virus injected into the academic, financial, medical, religious power structures in order to shape the acceptance of the death culture revered by Satanism. The organization of black operations and covert intelligence agencies during the Eisenhower years reveal the true motivations behind the shadow compartments of the military extraterrestrial industrial complex, which has acted as the facade for the negative alien agenda's activities since day one. The controller comprehends that psychological manipulation used to incite people's subconscious desires is not only how they can shape false narratives, but also get the masses to continually buy products and associate positive belief systems with those products. The subliminal association of positive belief systems being associated directly with products marketed with celebrity endorsements, glamorous images, and certain meme words to trigger impulsive reactions started 100 years ago and is at epidemic proportions today. In the digital age, it has been made virtually impossible to get away from being a captive audience for a string of commercials, being forced to watch several pop-up ads in order to get to the content one actually wants to read. As the result, advertising and marketing promotion revenue streams became the foundation of the third-dimensional corporate consumer media culture, with an endless promotion of products and services that provide the majority of funding for all mass media, radio, television, and online social media for all industries. The filter of news is packaged in corporate commercials through the paid advertising that is being delivered to their targeted audiences as a sales pitch. Advertisers are really corporate interests paying to shape the narrative of specific agendas that benefit them directly. And this information is packaged as daily news by the dominant media firms. The point is, we lost objective news and investigative journalism many years ago in favor of the corporate sellout using propaganda messages. Those that pay the most for advertising and yell the loudest get the undivided attention of the masses. Unfortunately, this propaganda model works well for those promoting spiritual consumerism, sponsoring advertisements for spiritual topics like ascension, consciousness, and disclosure that are being marketed for profit as purely entertainment content. In the digital age, a new phenomena of generating reality bubbles based upon the filter of the computer-coded algorithms that are being used in the powerful online media corporations is increasingly obvious. These algorithms are used in our news feeds and search options, and then generally regurgitating back the same information that we already know, a type of confirmation bias to the reality we are most comfortable with. Reality bubbles are generated when online searches for news or information are constructing a specific reality bubble that is a small imprint of the larger whole. This is creating a myopic point of view, where we only receive a very small section of news information that is tailored to our personal filters that conform into a reality bubble. That is the result of the artificial intelligence and algorithms that are used to track our preferences. In order to gain control over the information we have access to, these online media corporations find covert ways to harvest consumer data and then secretly redirect online traffic away from independent news websites carrying information about unapproved topics. Many alternative and independent journalists speaking about a range of unapproved topics like disclosure, ascension, QAnon, or the agenda for the Third World invasion of Europe are using platforms like YouTube and finding themselves subjected to sudden, mysterious suspensions and limitations based upon violations of community guidelines. Yet, the means of suspension can remain dodgy, without any clarity on exactly what content had been the source of the violation. Over the past few years, we have been subjected to increasing censorship via algorithmic control that is based upon the collection of our personal data. Obviously, it is disturbing to know that the controllers and the negative alien agenda want as much data and genetic profiling collected from all of us as a type of energetic harvesting machine. As more intimate details are gathered about our connections and preferences, that information is harvested and can actually be used to censor or suppress certain levels of information from being available to us. Becoming aware of the use of artificial intelligence algorithms is critical in comprehending the psychological warfare also being directed to influence and manipulate behavior, and this is occurring by censoring or limiting the kind of information we can access. Additionally, fake online identities are used for the purposes of deception and psychological manipulation to spread disinformation and propaganda messages throughout various social networks and online communities. This is referred to as a sock puppet, a person pretending to be another person that assumes this false identity in order to infiltrate or manipulate others in an online community. A straw man sock puppet is used by covert agendas to troll online communities, to make a particular point of view appear crazy in order to discredit the discussions and generate as much chaos and disruption as possible in the group. Similar to an online troll, the sock puppet's motivation is to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt within the group in order to divide and conquer. It is important to realize that sock puppets are considered a legitimate vocation. Hackers are hired and paid well to perform this role. They get paid to intentionally deceive others online, write phony complaints, or spread offensive language and ideas in order to kill off the business competition. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The intended spreading of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FUD, is a disinformation strategy used in sales, marketing, public relations, politics, cults, and propaganda. It is a strategy to control perception by disseminating negative, dubious, or false information by an orchestration of tactics that appeal to fear. To exploit fear, the troll uses a made-up fallacy or poses a false dilemma, and then attempts to create support for that idea by increasing fear, uncertainty, and doubt towards the alternative. Manipulators use veiled threats and uncertainties that attempt to elicit fear with the intention to place seeds of doubt that may lead to the person changing their mental position and going in another direction. To apply pressure, the manipulator offers a choice, framing it as the only choice available, in which rejecting one item acts as a selection of the other choice, such as, you are either with me or against me. When instigating fear and pressure in others as a manipulation tactic, the person is distracted from the fact that many other alternative choices are available in that situation. The most basic form of fallacy is straight-faced lying, where the speaker deliberately says something that is untrue, generally believing or hoping that the person will not notice. Fear-mongering with ambiguous language filled with FUD tactics are the basic tricks used by any corrupted person trying to sell a narrative, sell an idea, or sell a product in order to gain popular support for that position. Mainstream news headlines are filled with FUD tactics. Corporate advertising is filled with FUD tactics. The sales pitch could be politicians trying to sell the public on the necessity to go to war, and this narrative will include associations made to dangerous outcomes or criminals with exaggerated statistics to highlight the peril of not doing something, even when there is no peril present. When gaining clarity about the controller motivations to maintain and advance power and control in the global scape, to dominate world economies and further the master-slave narrative, the concept of carrying out covert military operations or false flag events to serve these agendas becomes increasingly evident. False flag operations are designed to create a false narrative, designed to deceive the masses, while disguising the actual source of responsibility in order to hide the real organization behind the attack or operation. In warfare, false flags are generally considered acceptable to deceive the enemy and to gain strategic advantage. False flag attacks are a method of psychological warfare in which the public reaction is led to follow the breadcrumb trail, to be much more likely to support their own government and military forces, especially if the operation is blamed on outsiders. Without full disclosure, however, most of the general public does not understand that a small band of power elite families coordinated a plan to declare war on the rest of the Earth population many years ago, with the greater assistance of non-terrestrial entities exploiting their power and greed. Earth humans have been sold out by a small power elite group of psychopaths. Currently, our world governments are embroiled in a hidden war between these cabal factions that include off-planet and on-planet groups. They are using every strategy of psychological manipulation and emotional exploitation against the public. They are using every media forum in order to gain a full spectrum dominance over the timelines in the future. As we gain more understanding about the propaganda model and how it is used to manipulate and manufacture consent, we can avoid the pitfalls and open ourselves to promote open discussion and informed debate on many topics that are labeled as unapproved or conspiracy theory in the mainstream. Conspiracy is fact on planet Earth, and there are many pieces of factual evidence that portray these conspiracies throughout history that are fully documented throughout governmental agencies in black and white. Many despot leaders and military strategists throughout history have acknowledged the use of false flags as a psychological weapon against their own country. The easiest way to gain control of a population is to carry out acts of terror, and the negative alien agenda use these tactics well. To understand what we are actually looking at, we first have to decode the methods used in psychological warfare to see how deep down the rabbit hole the psychological manipulation and exploitation of humanity goes, and the main reasons behind it. Social media and operant conditioning. Many people, especially in the younger generations, have become addicted to online social media platforms from being repeatedly exposed to types of operant conditioning in which a positive reinforcement occurs from online activity, and this induces changes in their brain chemistry. A neurochemical is released in the brain as a reward molecule after certain behaviors occur in a social media or marketing environment that is instigating a positive reinforcement. This is similar to getting a dopamine hit, in which the brain starts to associate dopamine pathways with certain online activity, people, products, or propaganda. Operant conditioning is a process of learned behavior from either positive or negative reinforcement, where the person associates something online as being positive or negative, and that information changes their expectations or controls their behavior. There are massive content collection industries dedicated to capturing data and selling our attention through social media, using psychological manipulation in online marketing strategies to bait audiences and encourage large followings, to accumulate very large numbers in website hits, marketed sales, or social media following. They commonly use tactics that exploit vulnerabilities in the human psyche and emotional state. The most common emotional exploitation is to trigger the desire that people have to belong somewhere, to feel accepted and acquire a social status within a desirable group. Teenagers are especially vulnerable to these manipulation tactics, not recognizing the complex deceptions that are involved. As a result, the greater the instinctual desire and need to belong, to feel accepted and be popular with a social status, the stronger the reaction the brain will have to positive conditioning where this particular belief system is being reinforced. Thus, excessive social network use can lead to addictive symptoms, using social media for changing moods and even suffering withdrawal effects. Some people can become obsessed with these positive reinforcement experiences and engage in compulsive behavior, such as a need to keep playing an online game or constantly checking email. This brings to surface our own personal responsibility to empower ourselves and our children through accessing the plethora of online educational information, but knowing moderation is needed so we are not consumed or manipulated by the marketing tactics of unscrupulous people. Without some personal discipline and self-awareness, These manipulation methods can form positive associations in our brain to products or people that are marketing themselves to appear as something that they are not. We have been conditioned in this consumer society to respond to superficial facades, appearances, and promises that a product will give us a better or more glamorous life. But many times, this is actually an imposter's sales pitch filled with psychological manipulations in order to get a following on social networks. Controlled chaos. Today, too many good-hearted people in the world give their corrupted leaders and policymakers the benefit of the doubt, citing incompetence or pathological compassion when attempting to explain away the rapidly increasing destruction and decay of their Western culture in major cities undergoing the agenda for controlled chaos. The systematic and methodical destruction of natural resources and civilized cultural settings, destroying or hiding beautiful masterpieces of art and literature, and the intended decimation of artifacts and antiquities highlighting previous ages of an enlightened human culture is not an accident. Controlled chaos is based on subjecting individuals to sophisticated methods of a global psychological manipulation designed to reform and suppress the mass consciousness by shaping false narratives that destroy unity and empathy within humanity. Divide and rule strategies encourage divisions, conflicts, and chaos among the opposing groups to prevent the formation of strong alliances and unification that could challenge the power of the controller or ruler. This extends to the negative entities, such as the Luciferian or Satanic groups, that exert further control over their human representatives that have been socially engineered to carry out their divide and conquer agenda against the human race. Comprehending the motivation of the controlling power elite means understanding their spiritual and ideological beliefs connected to using controlled chaos against their opposition, which essentially is to continually incite chaos and division in order to control the rest of Earth's inhabitants. Controlled chaos is understanding the role of chaos theory that is used in military-based decision-making when planning divide and conquer tactics being targeted against any group, demographic, or nation. Controlled chaos is used both as a spiritual warfare strategy on the metaphysical front by non-physical dark forces and as a propaganda-based disinformation tool and weakening tactic aimed against the masses in the physical world. This is a global strategy for full spectrum domination of Earth, carried out by negative alien agenda forces who use human controllers on the ground that have been handed access to unlimited wealth and resources of the planet in order to manage the rest of us in a controlled chaos. By methodically destroying the cohesion and unity that exists within any targeted group, organization, state, or nation, the group is weakened by internal division and chaos, whereby outside organized forces that use controlled chaos tactics can intercept and easily impose control over the group's resources. As a case study, The intended destruction of a powerful state could be potentially desired by multinational corporations, crime syndicates, and institutions that intend to gain aggressive control over the global financial, military, and information resources in that state. Strategies would include saturating the death culture propaganda into the population by reinforcing destructive behaviors, such as increasing destitution and homelessness, handing out free heroin needles, pushing sexual misery to reduce birth rates and increase death rates. When there is indifference to the suffering, misery, and destitution of others, people become suicidal and lose their will to live. This acts as a general euthanasia mechanism for facilitating a eugenic strategy or kill-off in the targeted culture. Instigating and seeding continuous chaos, particularly through natural disasters or emergency situations, overwhelms the capacity for supporting sustainable living and disrupts the stability and cohesion that is necessary to restore order to the disorder, uprooting people from their homes, creating refugees, and mass migrations are tools used for destabilization and psychological warfare. By gaining control of these areas through inciting chaos while destroying the local culture. When the natural environment and earth beauty is being destroyed, such as trees, plants, and animals, this decimation produces a dehumanization and demoralization effect upon the people living there. Living in a barren, desolate wasteland as a result of abject poverty, war, and cataclysmic events is not highly desirable to evolve consciousness and develop the local culture. It produces primitive values and barbarism. Through conditioning propaganda of continual controlled chaos as a way of life, being seeded as the global death culture, it achieves the aims of the controllers in various ways. Living in the psychological warfare terrain of global controlled chaos strategies stunts the growth of human consciousness, exploits primitive negative emotions, and neutralizes the inner drive to create and further develop in positive ways that contribute to society personally and professionally. It destroys the development of communication links between people, increasing compartmentalization and disconnection from seeing the larger sum of moving parts, removing access to information that gives people and groups access to see the whole picture. It reduces the ability of the common people to influence events in the power and control structures, promoting barbaric and primitive values as acceptable, while shutting down independent and alternative media. It increases bureaucracy, spreads gaslighting through false narratives, sows the delusional belief that more money is needed to solve everything, increases debt enslavement, and promotes corruption and criminal behaviors, destroys higher education progress, and thwarts true scientific discovery, eliminates the ability to pursue avenues for increasing humanity's higher development into free and open technologies that would eliminate war, fuel, and disaster-based economies, hides covert spiritual targeting and persecution, that is directed to stunt expanding consciousness, bombarding us with negativity while suppressing truth and Christic attributes in awakening people, as all media and control pillars in society are used to subdue us spiritually 24/7. Controlled chaos strategies and intentionally inciting the forces of chaos in the world at large are also entwined with the overall satanic ideology and its highest principles. Those individuals that are either moderate or extreme occultists in their different branches of the satanic belief system are also practicing the same divide and conquer strategies in order to gain advantage and oppress the masses through lack of empathy and compassion for others' plight. Satanism promotes the rise of master manipulators and sociopathic personalities to exploit all human psychological and emotional weakness for personal gain. For the satanic occultist, psychic attacking and black magic is designed for siphoning soul energy, for producing spiritual weakness, along with the premeditation of complex strategies that are designed to destroy their opposition at any cost. Hence, many Satanists are master propagandists, using complex deceptions for psychological manipulation in attempting to indoctrinate the public into various forms of moderate to extreme satanic ideology throughout the controlled mainstream media. Satanic ideology. Satanism also intentionally panders to the atheist and scientific communities as a recruiting mechanism for a far more nefarious agenda that serves the negative alien agenda groups. Satanic grooming methods manipulate those who do not understand the existence of consciousness existing without a physical body, or the consequences of giving energetic consent and authority to satanic forces. There are many people working in our society who have the same ideological beliefs as those shared in common with Satanism, yet they are not thought of as criminals, but are revered as powerful leaders in business, science, and technology. Essentially, this is the socially engineered society in which we have been groomed into using the 3 layers of ego filter and psychologically manipulated to co-create in the materialistic death culture, which is an anti-soul agenda. The primary main philosophies that interconnect throughout the different branches of Satanism include the following. Service to self. Each person should do whatever they can to advance their personal power and influence in the world, no matter what the cost, no matter what kind of harm is generated. It's either you or them. Moral nihilism. There is no such thing as ethics or standards of right or wrong behavior. Therefore, as human beings, we have the right to act upon our whims and base our actions accordingly. Social Darwinism, the belief that survival of the fittest and the strongest will always prevail to rule, and the focus on personal needs and survival in order to gain rulership is required by any means necessary. Eugenics, those that are most fit to rule are the top genetic specimens, and thus they decide how to propagate the future of the human gene pool by deciding who lives and who dies. The controllers, both human and non-human, that practice satanic ideology at whatever variant, intend to socially engineer the unaware masses towards self-destruction and spiritual weakness in order to divide and conquer those they believe are genetically inferior, ignorant, and unworthy. Here, we can see the master-slave narrative in action through the satanic ideology. Therefore, humanity is being indoctrinated with satanic ideology through assorted mind control and propaganda tactics, because the masses do not understand that they have been given a false narrative, a false version of Satanism that is being promoted by the mainstream media and popular culture. Through the lens of atheistic science with a satanic ideology overlay, the thought process is that humans are only animals, in which ethics, morality, compassion, and empathy are just human inventions. Therefore, only personal will, exercising might and power, is the right. In this fractured mindset, there is no God or organizing creative force in our universe. The declaration is that God's source is a religious delusion and that we live in a system of entropy. Thus, in this ideological mindset, a person who chooses his own selfish interests always, without care for the harm he or she does to others, they could be an addict, sadistic manipulator, murderer, or a power elite. In all intents and purposes, they are an agent for spreading Satanism, an agent for serving the negative alien agenda. This can be a harsh reality check when we begin to awaken to this deeper clarity about the environment we find ourselves in on 3D Earth. Yet it is empowering as this holds greater knowledge. Once we can accept and understand how this force works through others. In that realization, we can accept responsibility for our own actions and take steps to transform our mindset. Once we see how the satanic worldviews have been subliminally programmed into our unconscious mind, we can observe our thoughts and beliefs consciously, rediscovering our true self. Mainstream job is disinformation. The job of controlled mainstream media is not to inform, but to misinform the public, making it harder for people to make informed decisions about things that impact their own lives and that of their families. Mass media is used to divert public attention from important issues and changes that are decided upon by the political and economic elites through the technique of derailing important facts or information through the continuous flood of distractions, mindless entertainment, and insignificant information. The controlled media and press have mandates to provide all news and related media content to be written or presented at no greater level than what a 12-year-old child could understand. If all we have access to in the mainstream news and entertainment is being produced at a child's level, what kind of impact does that have on significantly lowering literacy levels and human intelligence? All forms of media are being used in a variety of targeted propaganda strategies that are designed to manipulate the way information is being relayed to the public, therefore manipulating and gaining control over popular public perception. We must look to identify how the monikers, memes, ridicule, public shaming, and labels that are coined by the media are used to throw people off from accessing the truth or facts in the matter, and further, to incite anger, fear, and division in the public. Each side is separated to appear as the opposition as it divides and designs victimizer archetypes to polarize people into enemy patterning, while it refuses to allow an intelligent or productive dialogue or recognize support for diverse opinions. No one is listening for the larger perspective, only crucifying any position or person that they do not agree with, when they know little to none of the facts. The mainstream media is paid hefty sums to incite division, aggression, character assassination, attack free speech, and generate obfuscation and chaos at every turn. Media literacy. To become more media literate, we have to be willing to drill the message down and seek its motivation in order to comprehend what we are really looking at when we are reading or accessing different forms of media. We also have to be willing to see the incentives of who is benefiting from the media being presented, and not take media at face value and blindly accept what is being presented as factual information that is actually true. Discernment skills, as well as comprehending how the negative ego functions in people and in ourselves, are critical skills required in developing media literacy. In all controlled press and media, the undisciplined negative ego and unhealed pain body are targeted by silent weapons used to control the public. This is why gaining neutrality and developing inner emotional clarity is also important when being saturated in different forms of media that are being used to influence or control the popular perception. When we access information reported or presented in the media, we should be considering the following questions to ask ourselves and help gain a larger perspective. Media literacy skills can help us all develop critical thinking skills, understand how media messages shape our culture and society, identify the target within the marketing strategies, recognize what the media maker wants us to believe or do, name the techniques of persuasion that are being used, name the controller programs that are being used to subdue the public, recognize bias, spin, misinformation, and lies, discover the parts of the story that are not being told, evaluate media messages based on our own experiences, skills, beliefs, and values, create and distribute our own media messages, advocate for media justice, telling the truth, giving the whole picture. Media literacy has a long history, and over the years, a number of different terms have been used to capture the skills, competencies, knowledge, and habits of a mind that are required for full participation in media-saturated societies. This is about developing people's critical thinking and analysis skills when it comes to mass media, popular culture, and digital media. Media education is the process, and media literacy is the outcome. When people better understand how media and technology actually work to influence thoughts and shape narratives, they are able to access, analyze, evaluate, and discern the information being presented. To better understand the most common forms of media manipulation, let us revisit Noam Chomsky's list, which describes these tactics so well. By understanding these manipulation tactics, it will serve to help develop and improve one's discernment with media literacy and to perceive the blatant mind control propaganda that is perpetrated against the masses. The 10 strategies of media manipulation. Number 1, the strategy of distraction. The primary element of social control is the strategy of distraction, which is to divert public attention from important issues and changes determined by the political and economic elites, by the technique of flood or flooding, continuous distractions, and insignificant information. The distraction strategy is also essential to prevent the public interest in accessing the essential knowledge in the areas of science, economics, psychology, neurobiology, and cybernetics. Maintaining public attention diverted away from the real social problems, captivated by matters of no real importance. Keep the public busy, 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 with no time to think, back to the farm, and other animals. This quote is from Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Number 2, create problems, then offer solutions. This method is also called problem, reaction, solution. They create a problem, a situation that is preferred to cause some reaction in the public or audience, so that this problem is the principal of the steps that they want you to accept. For example, let the problem unfold and intensify urban violence, or arrange for bloody attacks in order that the public is made pliable to accept security laws and policies that are at the detriment of personal freedoms, or to create an economic crisis and make that acceptable as a necessary evil, while limiting social and human rights with the dismantling of public services. Number 3, the gradual strategy or desensitization. To desensitize major issues through cultivating public acceptance to an unacceptable degree, just apply the changes gradually, little by little, over many consecutive years. That is how the radically new socioeconomic conditions of neoliberalism were imposed during the 80s and 90s. The minimal state, privatization, instability, massive unemployment, and low wages that did not guarantee a decent income. Many of these changes would have brought about a revolution if these changes had been applied all at once. Apply these changes gradually with distractions in order to desensitize and acclimate people to easily accept these changes. Number 4, the strategy of deferring. Another way to accept an unpopular decision is to present it as painful and necessary by gaining public acceptance at the time it will be used for a future application. It is easier to accept that a future sacrifice is necessary than of an immediate slaughter. In the beginning of introducing the idea to the public, people accept it because the effort is not being used immediately. Then, because the public has the tendency to expect naively that everything will be better tomorrow, they believe that the sacrifice required may be avoided in the future. This plays on people's hope and optimism, getting them to accept something unpleasant that will happen in the future. This gives the public more time to get used to the idea of painful changes and to accept it with resignation when the time comes. Number 5, go to the public as a little child. Most of the advertising to the general public uses speech, argument, people, and particularly children's intonation, often close to the emotional weakness, as if the viewer were a little child or mentally deficient. The harder one tries to deceive the viewer, the more it tends to adopt a tone that is infantilizing. Why? If one goes to a person as if she had the age of 12 years or less, then because of suggestion, she tends with a certain probability that a response or reaction also devoid of a critical sense as a person 12 years or younger. Number 6, use the emotional reaction more than the reflection. Making use of the emotional aspect is a classic technique for causing a short circuit on rational analysis and critical thinking. And finally, to short circuit the common sense of the individual. Furthermore, the use of emotional register to open the door to the unconscious mind for implantation or grafting of ideas, seeding into the subconscious desires, fears, and anxieties, addictions, or intending to induce certain behaviors. Number 7, keep the public in ignorance and mediocrity. Making the public incapable of understanding the technologies and methods that are used to mind control and enslave them. The quality of education given to the lower social classes must be as poor and mediocre as possible so that the gap of ignorance it plans among the lower classes and upper classes is and remains impossible to attain for the lower classes. This is a quote from Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Number 8, to encourage the public to be complacent with mediocrity. Promoting to the public to believe that it is fashionable to be stupid, vulgar, and uneducated. A person can become famous on social media by acting like a vulgar idiot or posting butt or nude shots. Number 9, strengthening self-blame and depression. Let individuals blame others for their misfortune because of the failure of their intelligence, their abilities, or their own efforts. So instead of rebelling against the economic system or wanting access to education or knowledge, the individual automatically validates their guilt and unworthiness, which creates depression. Depression has an effect which inhibits any kind of outward action and generates apathy. When there is inaction and people that are apathetic, there is no revolution for change. And number 10, getting to know the individuals better than they know themselves. Over the past 50 years, advances of accelerated science and knowledge has generated a growing gap between public knowledge and those owned and operated by the dominant power elites. Thanks to biology, neurobiology, and applied psychology, the system has enjoyed a sophisticated understanding of what motivates human beings, both physically and psychologically, perfecting mind control propagandist techniques. The system has gotten better acquainted with the common man more than he knows himself. This means that in most cases, the system exerts greater control and greater power over individuals, because the system has much more knowledge to manipulate others. Thus, they know the individual more than the individuals know themselves. Be aware that the world of television and digital media has become a tool of de-evolution, propaganda, and social control. Nearly unlimited resources have been applied to understand how to manipulate the human psyche through television and other forms of mass media. What we have today is an increasingly sophisticated, full-spectrum assault on the free will and psychological well-being of all people, and we have come to a point where it is no longer even necessary for media institutions to attempt to hide their blatant work of manipulating public opinion, manufacturing consent, and creating winners and losers in the minds of the already mind-controlled public. Whether for marketing or for manufacturing consent, the media industry is guilty of using subtle and not so subtle tactics to influence our conscious and subconscious minds, to influence our opinions and behavior. There are countless examples of these practices, and discerning, awake people would be well served to be vigilant of this when consuming modern media in any form. As informed people, we must acknowledge that we are being lied to, and that the institutions we should be able to depend on for bringing us an objective view of the world are anything but objective. They are paid sponsors of the power elite agendas. Thus, pay attention, develop strong discernment, and do your own research to stay awake and aware in these times of great turbulence and powerful change. We need the brave, courageous, empathic, trustworthy people dedicated to truth and love for life to rise to fill the void of getting the humanitarian messages back into circulation. Pay close attention and do not feed into the insanity of the psychological operations made against the public. Stay calm, neutral, and carry on with speaking your truth, living from your heart, and never give up your purpose and mission. Please only take what is useful for your spiritual growth and discard all the rest. Thank you for your courage and bravery to be a truth seeker. Until next, stay in the luminosity of your avatar, Christos Sophia Heart Path. Please be kind to yourself and each other. With a loving heart, until next month.